everyone, how are you doing? My name is Ryan Kelly and I'm going to be hosting another episode of Know Your Bosses. Know Your Bosses, if you're not aware, is a show where I'll review some of the most classic bosses to the lesser known ones. I'll rank them based on their difficulty, creativity, appearance, and fighting style. In the end, the boss will get a ranking from 1, avoid the fight, to 10, pursue the fight. So now that I've quickly gone over the rules, we can talk about the boss we'll be fighting today. Today I'm going to be discussing location. Bogmire is located in the graveyard, which you can find by going to the boneyard. In order to be able to access the boneyard, you'll need to have done all the mandatory things in Area 2, like capturing the floating whirlindas, releasing the boos and capturing at least 5 of them, and capturing Shivers and Melody. Once you've done all of that, then you'll get access to the fire and water elements, which you can use in order to access the boneyard. Once in the boneyard, you'll need to capture Spooky. After that, you'll be able to view the doghouse through your Game Boy Horror. Doing this will give you access to the graveyard. Once in the graveyard, you'll need to defeat 3 skeletons by hitting these grave tombs. Once you do that, the big grave tomb in the middle of the graveyard will glow and you'll be able to start the fight. Boss information. Bogmire, the Cemetery Shadow, is the second main boss of Luigi's Mansion, and is the boss for Area 2. His name is a mix of the 2 words being bog and quagmire.
Giggity giggity, giggity goo. Stick around.
No, not that quagmire.
Giggity.
The quagmire that means swamp. The word bog is another way of saying swamp, thus the reason why his name is Bogmire. Although Bogmire has one of the most intimidating appearances in the game, he is the only ghost that doesn't directly attack Luigi. He uses his clones, or as the game calls them, his shadows, to attack you. Speaking of his shadows, Bogmire's bronze and silver portraits show him as he appears in the fight, but the gold portrait shows him as a shadow. So, could this be implying that Luigi didn't actually capture the real Bogmire, but rather a shadow disguised as the real one? Another interesting fact that adds to why the Bogmire that Luigi captures in the graveyard could be a clone is because he's the only ghost that doesn't have a heart, implying that he doesn't have a soul. Interesting. But by far the weirdest thing about Bogmire is that he could possibly be Nana's husband. And finally, probably the coolest thing about Bogmire is that in the beta version of Luigi's Mansion, he was going to be a completely different boss.
Beta to final. The original concept for the fight with Bogmire was going to be completely different. In fact, Bogmire wasn't even planned to be in the final game. It was going to be a boss fans call ELH. But before we talk about ELH, let's talk a little bit about the development of Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion was originally being developed for the Nintendo 64, but the project was later moved to the GameCube. In early stages of Luigi's Mansion's development, Bogmire wasn't yet considered to be an Area 2 boss, but rather a large, twisty-looking creature known as ELH. This creature, ELH, has its own untextured character model within the game's code. also with 6 different animations, an attacking animation, an animation for taking damage, 2 idling animations, a standby animation, and lastly, an animation where the ELH appears. Not only were these animations found within the game's files, but there are also particle effects relating to fire and ice. This is odd considering you acquire the ice element much later in the game. There's also an unused model of Bogmire that was put in just a few weeks before the final version. This model had a lot more jagged edges, the mouth and wings were much longer, the goop from the mouth was much more thin and also very jagged. Even in its beta stages, Bogmire is just as mysterious as he remains in the final game.
Strategy. There's not anything that you can really collect before the fight because he isn't really weak to water or fire. The only thing that I would say to make sure that you have is to have full health. Another thing that I should mention before the fight starts is that there are 3 different rankings that you can get based on how well you do on the boss, being gold, silver, and bronze. You can get a gold portrait if you have 90% of your health or more, a silver portrait if you have between 60 and 80% of health, and a bronze if you have anything less than 60% health. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, we can talk about the fight. The fight with Bogmire is pretty easy. Bogmire will never directly attack you, however he will use his shadows to hit you. So what you need to do in order to win is to suck one of the shadows up that are coming towards you, then you'll need to track down Bogmire and hit him with that shadow. Now keep in mind that Bogmire will be teleporting kinda quickly around the arena, so make sure that he's just teleporting to a new location before hitting him with the shadow. Also make sure that you're aware that the shadows can vary in size, so the bigger the shadow you get, the longer he'll stay stunned for. Now sucking Bogmire up is pretty easy to do once you've hit him with a shadow. He'll be absorbed in a huge ball. All you'll need to do is just suck him up. While sucking him up, make sure to avoid the remaining shadows because running into one of them while you're sucking up Bogmire will get you hurt and you will lose Bogmire. There isn't really any good advice I can give in order to avoid the shadows because they heavily rely on RNG. So where they are is going to be completely random every single time. Even if you are able to avoid the shadows while sucking up Bogmire, you'll still lose him after a certain amount of time. So you'll have to repeat this process until you completely drain all of Bogmire's health. Once you do that, then you will have successfully defeated Bogmire. Rewards. Once you've defeated Bogmire, you'll be rewarded with the club key, which will give you access to the courtyard, which is the beginning of the 3rd area of the game. Final thoughts. In this section of the video, I'll be talking about how the gameplay, design, difficulty, fun factor, and creativity weigh in on my opinion of whether I think a boss is good or not. Anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's start this section.
I really want to love this fight. The presentation is eerily fantastic. The character of Bogmire is spooky and just overall really creative. He may be one of the only actual scary enemies from this game. So from entering the graveyard to Bogmire's opening cutscene, the game really does a great job at making you feel uneasy yet prepared for an amazing battle. Unfortunately, this becomes a pretty big disappointment once you're faced with this absolute mess of a boss fight.
The fight is full of RNG, which is never a good thing, especially when it comes to a boss fight. The RNG presented in this fight is where Bogmire and Bogmire's shadows will teleport to, what size his shadows will be, and how many shadows you can get at a time. Normally this makes for a good boss fight because some random factors can add legit challenge to a fight, but if a boss is mainly RNG based, then the fight becomes annoying and too unpredictable.
Also, don't forget that the boss fight takes place in a small circular arena, not very creative or conventional for the fight. Not to mention just how hard Bogmire is to capture, not because it's genuinely difficult, but because the pattern and speed in which Bogmire moves in makes him the hardest ghost to capture in the game.
Also, having to deal with how quickly Bogmire will teleport around the room, plus the fact that the shadows randomly generate in both size and location, makes for a fight that heavily relies on good RNG instead of skill level.
Now, Bogmire has a great design and a pretty interesting atmosphere surrounding it, but this gets ruined when the fight is bland and tedious. I mean, even the theme sounds bland, especially when compared to some of the other great music in the game.
So, with this all in mind, our final score for Bogmire is
a 4 out of 10.
So, what do you think about this boss? Do you think this boss deserves a higher or lower ranking? Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video or not. Also, make sure to click the like button if you liked the video and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Ryan Kelly and I will see you in the next episode of Know Your Bosses.